Hi everyone, I'm Jill Allen. Welcome to Cooking by the Book. Every episode we pick 3 cookbooks from our library's electronic collection and select 3 recipes to make. This episode, our focus is on beans. So let's get started. Let's talk about beans for a minute. There are hundreds of varieties of beans out there. You've got your little beans like split peas and lentils, and your larger beans that everyone's familiar with, like pinto beans, black beans, kidney beans, navy beans, and garbanzos. Beans are fabulous to have in your pantry because they are a high protein, high fiber food, and they're cheap. Canned beans are immensely convenient to keep on hand, but dried beans last almost indefinitely, and they come in an even greater variety to choose from. Cooking dried beans is really not hard. The largest ingredient is time. The larger beans need to be soaked to cut down on cooking time. There are 2 ways in which you can soak your beans. There is the overnight soak, very easy. Take cold water, cover your beans with it, let them sit overnight. They will double in size, and then the next day you can cook them. Or there is the quick soak method, where you take boiling hot water, cover your beans, and let it sit for an hour. The beans swell up faster. I'm going to demonstrate this a little later in the video. So once the beans have been soaked, you put them on the stove and cook them for about 40 to 45 minutes, and they're done. For our first recipe, we're going to focus on a book called Bean by Bean, a cookbook by Crescent Dragon Wagon. We are going to make a much loved appetizer, hummus. It's actually so simple to make, you will never want to buy it again. All right, we're going to put our drained chickpeas in here. We do like to save the juice. We can use it to thin the hummus if it's too thick. So here we go with the garbanzos. We'll put these aside. The next thing we need is about 3 tablespoons of tahini. Tahini is a sesame seed paste. It can be found in the supermarket. If you don't have any, it's okay to substitute olive oil, sometimes peanut butter, any kind of oil you want. It gives it a unique flavor, but it's by no means necessary to have tahini in your hummus. We need about 3 tablespoons of that, and I'm getting a little low on, as you can see, so I'll probably have a little less than that, and it'll be fine. Here we go. We also need 4 cloves of garlic, which I like to smash ahead of time, which we can do with my handy garlic clove smasher. Like that. About 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Delicious. I love olive oil. And the juice of a lemon. Since this is a particularly large lemon, I'm going to start with adding half of it, the juice from half of it. I don't want it to be too lemony. So I got about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice there. So then the next thing we do is we start to mash it all together. I gonna love to use an immersion blender for this. Let me move this out of the way, move this in. Yeah, it's very thick, so we're gonna start thinning it a little bit. You wanna see what this looks like? Work it. It starts to break down and become smooth and paste-like. Now, if you don't have an immersion blender, you can use a regular countertop blender or a food processor or even a potato masher. You can just keep breaking it down. You want to see the texture? It's still rather thick, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the liquid from the can. I want to get it to a good dippable consistency. For me, that means I can dip a corn chip in it and the chip's not going to break. A little more liquid. And I would say that's about perfect. All right, we are ready to serve this. Put it in a pretty bowl. Now you can put all kinds of things to fancy up your hummus. I've got some fresh grown chives from my garden, so we're gonna go ahead and snip those on top. And this is my favorite part. Delicious. The recipe we're going to make now is a black bean soup recipe that can be found in Heirloom Beans, Recipes from Rancho Gordo. This recipe is Caribbean black bean soup with roasted garlic and tomatoes. I have some of the ingredients laid out right here. It takes half a pound of black beans cooked. So obviously I need to cook these. A half pound of black beans dry equals about 2 cans of prepared beans that you can buy at the supermarket. We also have some chopped jalapeno, 1 chopped carrot, some cumin, oregano, and cayenne pepper, 6 cloves of unpeeled garlic. And the recipe calls for fresh tomatoes, but I don't have any on hand. We're gonna use diced tomatoes and roast it. So the first thing we're gonna do is get the beans cooking. We're gonna do a quick soak of the black beans and then we're going to cook them. Just because I had dry black beans in my pantry, you might have cans of beans, which would make this a lot faster. So I put them in a pot, add boiling water to cover them, and then set it aside for an hour. The beans are gonna swell up and absorb the water. Now another thing, if you are preparing beans from dry, it's always a good idea to make extra because you can always freeze the soaked beans and cut out that step for your next time you're making the recipe. One thing that makes this recipe so special is you roast the garlic and caramelize the tomatoes in the oven before you make the soup. And that adds a nice dimension to the soup. So what we're gonna do is take our tomatoes that are canned, that I've drained, and put them in a little pan. We're gonna take some olive oil, drizzle it over the unpeeled garlic cloves. Say that looks like enough. We're gonna wrap this up. It's a little packet. And we're gonna put this in the oven at 400 for about 25 minutes. So while my beans are soaking, I'm gonna go ahead and get this cooked. We'll be back. The tomatoes are out of the oven. You can see that they're looking a little roasted. They smell really good. But even better, the garlic cloves. They're nice and roasty and they're a little hot. When they cool down, we're gonna peel them and then we'll get on with making the soup. We've been soaking the black beans in boiling water for about an hour. You can see how they have swelled up and gotten much larger. Now we're going to cook them for, I guess, about half an hour, 45 minutes until they're done. So stay tuned. As you can see, the beans are done. Our next step is to saute the peppers and carrots in a little bit of olive oil. We want to caramelize them a bit in the pan. You add a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and then we'll let that get going. All right, you can see that this is getting all nice and roasty and sizzling in the pan. I'm just trying to brown the veggies a bit, maybe caramelize them some. This all adds flavor to the soup, giving it another dimension. It really doesn't take very long. You do have to keep stirring it so it doesn't burn, because burnt is not the flavor we're trying to add here. If it starts getting too hot, we can turn it down a little bit. But look how beautiful that is. All right, the vegetables are nice and soft. We're going to add the seasonings, let the flavors bloom for a moment in the pan. It smells really good. Give that a minute. You can see how this looks. We just want them to get warm. And now we will add this all to our soup pot. Let me grab it's a little hot. All right, this is where it all starts to come together. I'm going to transfer our soup pot over here. All right, so we've got the vegetables and spices in here now. So this is where we will add the tomatoes we roasted. And peel the garlic and add it. It's super smushy, but all the better, you know? See how that just oozes out of the skin. Smush it up a bit because we don't want to have big chunks in there. Your fingers are as good as any utensil. All right, and now let's stir that together. Aprons are very handy, and we're going to add our broth. I used some chicken stock I had homemade, but you can use canned broth, broth in a carton, water. You could use chicken broth, veggie broth, or pork broth if you have access to it. Now we're going to bring this to a boil and let it cook for about 10 minutes. After it boils for a while, it's ready, so we can take about half the soup out and puree it. You can do this in a blender or a food processor, or just stick an immersion blender in there and puree it. It helps if you plug in your blender first. This will thicken it nicely and give it some body. lovely. Soup is ready. We've garnished it with a little sour cream, cilantro, and avocado. So we're ready to taste it and enjoy. Another winner. Our next recipe is a tangy lentil salad. This recipe comes from the book Vegetarian Comfort Foods by Jennifer Brown. The recipe actually calls for a 16-ounce can of cooked lentils. I didn't have that. I've got dry lentils on hand. I couldn't even find canned lentils in the grocery store. But that's not a problem because lentils are really easy to cook. They are one of the smaller beans and they do not require any pre-soaking at all. Very simple ratio, 1 cup dry to 3 cups of liquid. I'm just going to use water for this. So we're gonna put them in here, add the water, and then we're gonna boil them for 20 to 25 minutes until they're soft. A cup of dry lentils, once they're cooked, should be about 2 to 2.5 cups, all told. So we'll check back in a few minutes. While the lentils cook, we're gonna prepare all the other ingredients. It takes about a cup of grape tomatoes, which we're gonna cut in half. It's gonna be fantastic. It also takes half a cup of diced red onion. I already diced them because no one needs to see me cry on camera. A 1/4 cup of chopped parsley and the juice of half a lemon, some mustard, olive oil, salt and pepper. Really simple recipe. I think this is gonna be really delicious. These lentils have cooked for about 20 minutes. You can see they've absorbed most of the water in the pot. I'm going to drain them and rinse them with cold water, and then we'll make our salad. All right, we've got our drained lentils. Let's add our tomatoes, the red onion, parsley. It calls for the juice of half a lemon, which we will put in here. Some Dijon. Calls for a little more Dijon than I have on hand, but that's okay. We're improvising. And some olive oil, about 4 tablespoons. We'll just be generous here. I don't usually measure this stuff and doing it by feel. We'll stir it all in. Oh, salt and pepper too. Our tangy lentil salad is all ready for us to taste it. Let's see, what have we made? Really good, very tangy, very bright. This is lunch today.